If you're a fan of 2.5-inch pre-cut strips that you buy in little packs like this, I'm going to show you how to turn your extra scraps into nail file holders. And I'm going to show you how you can make them for any size nail file. Have you ever stuck your hand in your purse and inadvertently messed up your nail or scratched the top of your polish with one of the nail files in there? Ugh, it is the worst. This is where cute little fabric nail file holders come into play. Now, most nail files come in these two sizes. You can get those real little skinny ones too, the 7 inches and then the 3.5-inch long. And you can buy these in bulk. You will be shocked at how inexpensive they are on Amazon. You can get like 100 to 200 of these for $5 to $10. And these for 100, you can get between, I think, $5 and $12. It just depends. If you want to just go with a basic color, it's going to be less expensive than something fun. This is an incredibly budget-friendly project. Let's start with this one. I am going to cut it to 14.5 inches long. Now, the way you figure out the length that you need is you measure the length of your nail file, you multiply it by 4, and you add 1/2 inch. Now we're just going to fold it, matching the short ends. We're going to take it to the sewing machine and just sew straight down both sides. Now we're going to sew each side with a 1/4 inch seam. Now if you're going to be making more than one at a time, just daisy chain, go down one side of all of them and then the other side, and you can just clip them off and keep going in one long strip. From one 40-inch strip of 2.5-inch wide fabric, you can make one long and one short nail file holder. Now I'm just going to clip these corners a teeny bit on the folded end so that it's going to make a better point when we turn that right side out. And I like to do really long angled to get a lot of that fabric out of there. If you have tube turners, this is the perfect project for it. I use the 1/2 inch. If you don't, you're just going to use your fingers, turn these right side out. But let me show you how this tube turner works. You put the hollow part into your project. It's even more important on longer ones. And then you take your stick with the pointier end going in first, and you push the fabric into the tube and pull it. See how fast that is? Now, when you use the pointy part, you can then use that as your turner and push those corners out. You want to do that really slowly and gently so that you don't all of a sudden see that point come through your fabric and get really bummed. So that's set. If I didn't have the tube turner, I could turn this right side out, like you turn anything right side out, push that in, pull it out as best you can. It's a little harder on your fingers. It takes a lot longer without this tool. And it's very inexpensive. They're usually under $10 for a set of 3. And I use them for so many different projects. I would highly recommend you go grab one. I will have a link to find it on Amazon, or you can find it in most sewing stores, Michael's, places like that. So imagine how much of a pain that would be to do by hand. But with the tube turner, it is lickety split. And this is the size for one of the longer nail files. So I pulled it down. You don't want to pull this off until you have the fabric through, because you want to hold that fabric, pull that down, pull that off. But see how fast that was? These are amazing if you're making aprons and have those really long straps. You can turn them right side out in a jiffy. So now let's take all 3 of these. We're just going to make 3 at once today. We're going to take all 3 of these to the ironing board. So what we need to do is we need to get these seams pulled out evenly. We don't want it to be folded over. Like, we don't want any of the fabric tucked in as we press. So I usually just take my fingers and I move them back and forth and get one side good and iron that side, and then press down with the tailor's clapper. And then I come and do the other side. I find trying to do both at the same time, I often end up with one side not quite right, where it's, not pulled out as much, and then it's not going to be straight. And then I'm using this to help cool off the fabric and really set that so it is nice and flat. So I'm going to get all 3 of these to that same stage, and then we are going to press those raw edges in, and we are going to sew across the top to basically make a closed fabric tube. Turn that under about a 1/4 inch. If you go a little bit further, it's totally fine. This is not a quilt block, so it's not something that needs to be super precise. Just make sure it is folded and even. And then press that. I've seen other tutorials where people use interfacing or even a stiff interfacing to make the nail holders harder, but I really don't think it's necessary because the nail file is going to do that for you. And I am all about quick and easy projects with as few materials as possible. So let's not make this more complicated than it needs to be and just use a piece of fabric. And as you can see, if you just do each step multiple times, you can really whip out a bunch of these at once. So that does make it a great gift, a great project or idea to sew and sell because you can use your fabric scraps. It's not going to take you a lot of time. The nail files aren't expensive, and it is a great impulse purchase if you sell at craft fairs or online. These are all pressed and ready, so we're going to go back to the machine and we're going to sew straight across the open edges of all three. If you want your thread to coordinate so it's not very visible, you could pick something that matches. But because I'm doing a few, I'm just going to use white thread so that I can get all three of these done quickly. And I did one where it matched the green, so I'll be able to show you the difference that the thread can make. I'm going to use a little leader fabric, which is just a little scrap piece of fabric that I'm going to put behind what I am sewing, because then I can start back here. I don't have to worry about pulling up the bobbin thread, and I can just sew right onto here, back stitch, and get that sewed closed. So you're not going to have any kind of a bird's nest on the project, and you don't have to take that time to pull up the bobbin thread. I like to do that when I'm starting off of the edge of a project. Just makes it easier and faster. So we have all three of those. Now we're just going to take that leader fabric off the back so that we can use it again. Snip these apart, cutting off the excess thread in between if there is any. And we're going to go back to the workspace. I'm going to show you how to decide how much to fold these up before we finish the sewing. Isn't this easy? Who are you going to make them for first? I would love to know. Now we are going to fold these up and sew them together. So this one, the nail file is almost all the way in. You can also make them longer and have them flap over, but this is the quickest and easiest way. So what you're going to do is you're going to take your strips of fabric and you're going to put the folded side up. Then you're going to place your nail file on there and you're going to fold it up. If you want it to be exactly like that, you can just sew here and here as two separate stitch lines. But because I like things to move a little bit faster, I like to sew down, across, and up and be done. Which means this is going to stick out a little bit more because you're going to lose here. So see, that's where the edge of that nail file is. So now it's coming across the top. So I'm gonna just move this down a little bit more, fold that up, because I want my file to not go above the backing. So that is how long I want that one. I'm just going to put a little clip in there. I'm gonna do the same thing on this one. And oh my gosh, isn't this tape measure perfect with the little quilt block fabric? Love it. So I'm pushing to make sure there's about a ½ inch up there, because then when I push that up a little to accommodate for the stitching that's going to go across there, we know how much it's going to come out. And if you don't want as much sticking out, just use a longer strip of fabric. Back to the sewing machine, we are almost done. Now on the last step, I taught you a trick to not have to pull the bobbin thread up, but here you're going to need to, because we're starting in the center of fabric. There's fabric in front and behind where you're starting, and you're going to see the back. What you do is you hold the top thread, put your foot down, put your needle down, lift your needle, give a little tug, and then I always keep tweezers so that I can grab that without poking my finger. It also helps me push those threads down, get it under the foot. Now I'm going to hold both of these threads as I take my first few stitches forward and back to knot. And that will prevent the machine from pulling that thread under and creating what we love to call bird's nests. They are so quick and easy to sew. Throw them in your purse. These make great gifts. Teacher appreciation, they could be shower favors, you could put them into a little self-care box, a manicure gift, so many things that you can do with these. So that one is done. Now I'm going to do the same thing with the other two. All that's left is to add the nail files. How cute is that? Let me know in the comments if you're going to give this as a solo gift, if you're going to make a little manicure, pedicure gift pack with it, what you plan to do. I'm always curious about what people do with my projects. Make sure you have subscribed to my channel, hit that bell so YouTube lets you know every time I post something